Yeah, this is my trip to Central Europe, mostly Slovakia. So I'll be taking you through it picture by picture. I know you're going to be seeing a lot of pictures of really nice old buildings and stuff inside museums. Um, it's going to seem a little bit like it was a vacation, but it really wasn't. These were just the few days I got out and actually got to see some stuff. Most of the time we were planning, doing ministry stuff, planning for camps, planning lessons. So yeah, we were very busy, and it was indeed a mission trip, not just a nice little vacation. And I'd like to thank everyone for supporting me with prayer and funds. Yeah, both of those things are very important, and I wouldn't want to do this thing if it were just like a vacation to Slovakia. I really probably wouldn't want to go to Slovakia if it was just a vacation because, well, I mean, it's a beautiful place, don't get me wrong, but it's not a place I'd go for a nice little vacation. But yeah, I'm going to take you through a little bit of culture and history of Slovakia before I actually get into my own trip. So if you could go to the first slide, Sam. That's great. Okay, this is a map of Slovakia. We spent about like 5 days max at one place at a time. A lot of the cities we left and came back to. There was only like a couple cities that we went to for like a couple days, but pretty much we were in every single like little like province you see there in Slovakia, besides the green one in the upper in the east to the north, Prisov. That was like we kind of like took a train through there, but we didn't actually stay. The first day anyway, yeah, but yeah, this is Slovakia. It's part of Czechoslovakia formerly. The Czech Republic and Slovakia were once one country. If you're older, you'll remember that from history. And during the Cold War, they split up. And well, after the Cold War, they split up into the Czech Republic and Slovakia. Their languages are very similar. They're both have speak a Slavic language, which is different from a lot of the countries that border it. They speak a different language than the Austrians and the Hungarians. They speak their own dialects of basically a Slavic language, which is similar to Russian, Polish, and the Czech. They all kind of can understand each other while we were there. This is kind of like a very small country. If you notice, there's only about 5.5 million people who live in Slovakia, and in total, I think it's only like 6 million people natively speak Slovak in the world. It's not a very there aren't a lot of Slovaks in general. It's a very small country. We started in Jelena, which is the purple like country up there and way in the corner. It looks like Zelina, but there's a little accent mark that makes it sound like Jelena. And then we stayed most of our time in Banska Bystrica, which is the orange one, the red circle in the orange state right there. It's kind of like in the middle of the country, a lot of mountains there, very beautiful. We also spent a lot of time in the east and did a camp in Košice, which is the second largest city in Slovakia. It's on the far east. And in Bratislava, which is the capital, which is right next to Austria and Hungary. It's the only country's capital that borders two other countries. It's a very old city. It used to be called Pressburg when it was ruled by the Austrians, and it had a really heavy Jewish population. It doesn't now for reasons that should be obvious if you know anything about the Holocaust or World War II. Slovakia right after used to be its own independent country during World War II because the leader of Slovakia, his name was Tiso. he was actually a Catholic priest, and he collaborated with the Nazis to send all of the Jews almost all of the Jews in Slovakia to concentration camps. So I believe like before the war there was like almost a couple 100,000 Jews living in Slovakia. After the war there was about a couple hundred. So the population of Slovakia's Jews was completely destroyed during the Second World War because the collaboration with the Nazis was very strong in Slovakia. They broke away from the Czech Republic during the war and Tiso gave like a lot of land in Slovakia to Hungarians, which is why now there used to be a lot of like ethnic Hungarians that lived in Slovakia. There aren't now because the government forced them to leave after the war because they didn't exactly get along after the war either. So yeah, next slide, Sam. This is their World War II museum in Banska Bystrica. It's kind of like their kind of like national monument to like the resistance fighters in Slovakia. Not everyone in Slovakia collaborated with the Nazis. A lot of them a lot of the mine workers actually took to the mines and fought the Nazis from the mines and in the forests and the mountains. It's actually designed to look like a national folk hero. His hat, anyway. That's their Robin Hood, pretty much. His name is Janošík, and he is kind of like Robin Hood, only he's worse in probably every way, because instead of stealing from the poor and giving to the rich, he just steals from the rich and keeps it for himself. Yeah. And his superpower is to jump over bonfires. That's what he's good at, instead of shooting a bow and arrow. But basically, he's like their Robin Hood, and he's supposed to like represent the partisan fighter during World War II, who would disappear into the mountains and fight the Nazis. They had all these cool tanks and guns, and like a little example of what like their bunkers would look like, and what they would build during the war in the woods. So yeah, all that stuff was pretty cool to see there in Banska. And that's where we spent most of our time. Next slide, please. So yeah, this is me and my team in Jelena. This is the first town we went to while we got into Slovakia. The guy there on the left with the mustache is Caleb. He's from a church in Illinois. Anna, she's from Eagle River, Wisconsin. She's the one on the right next to Caleb. She's a pastor's child, and she sung a lot, and she was really awesome with the kids because she wants to be a preschool teacher when she graduates college. And right next to me is Carly. She's from Florida, but her family's originally from Maine, and she goes to college in Boston. So yeah, this is my team. This is who I was with through the camps and through all summer. We actually ran the Amazing Race together in the Czech Republic when we first landed. We got to the Czech Republic after staying up all day through flights. And we actually had a bunch of stations set up around Prague, in the capital city of the Czech Republic. Basically, that's the city we ran around the first day, going to different stations, doing different team building activities. And actually, there was a lot of public transport we had to figure out, which was very hard because in our intern team, there were only Americans, which is unusual. Usually there is at least one or two Europeans. There were no Europeans with our Slovak team. So we were just alone, Americans. We just kind of figured it out as we went along. And actually ended up way better than our leaders expected it to. They actually expected us to get lost and to take a wrong train or something, but that never happened. So luckily, we got to where we were going pretty well, and we were in Prague for a while. Then the second day, we went to a city called Ostrava in the east of the country, and we ran the second leg of our amazing race, which ended in a little town called Malinovice in the far east of the Czech Republic. It's actually like a little like ski resort hotel that they have. It was formerly a ski resort and hotel, but the JV actually bought it to do intern training, and that's what we did for 5 days after we ran the Amazing Race. We met, had like Bible studies, and were basically trained on what was expected of us in the camps and how to introduce and talk about the Bible to the youth of Central and Eastern Europe. Got to talk with a bunch of people from other intern teams going to like Germany, Poland, Serbia, Croatia, all these different countries. It was really cool to see everyone and meet everyone and basically get to know who was who in JV. Yeah, I got to meet the actual leader of JV and all the people who actually set up and run JV from the day-to-day basis, and all the other intern leaders, as I said. So yeah, it was really cool. And then from there, we went to Žilina, and we basically started going to schools in Slovakia and just introducing them to the camps. The teachers there seemed pretty eager to actually have us in the classroom. They wanted their students to talk to us, to practice their English, and we actually got to talk to a lot of people in a lot of different schools. We were in like 6 or 7 different schools over like a period of a week. And we went to Žilina, Košice, and Bratislava. We were all over the country. We were taking trains everywhere. It seemed like we were traveling a lot in those first couple weeks. So yeah. Next slide, Sam. Oh yeah, this is actually in Prague. This is actually a site of what used to be the biggest statue of Stalin in the world. They blew it up after he died because they realized he was kind of crazy, and they probably shouldn't be celebrating him. So they put this in where he was, where the statue was standing now. It's actually really cool. It's called the Pendulum of Empires. It's supposed to represent the rise and fall of empires. They built this after the Soviet Union fell apart. Yeah, it's a really cool place too, because you can stand and like look out over the city. Prague is a really beautiful city, has a lot of cool bridges and history. Yeah, it's really cool. And this is like where we did our amazing race, and we actually held a silent prayer meeting right on top of this mountain, or this hill, overlooking the town. So yeah, that was part of the amazing race. Next slide. Oh yeah, this is Bratislava. This is actually the president's mansion. Yeah, so this is the part of the slideshow that's more vacation-y. This is like after we got done going to schools in Bratislava, meeting with students, and basically seeing the capital and the palace that they had there. Yeah, Bratislava is also a really nice looking city. The Danube, and yeah, we met with a lot of the leaders and the local church in Bratislava as well. They actually meet in a shopping mall. And they have like their own little room off to the side. And churches in Slovakia are usually pretty small. This one was a bigger one, and by bigger I mean there was like 50 people that went to this church. A lot of Slovak churches kind of meet in like basically like buildings that they rented out, or like people's homes if they have enough room outside. So yeah. In Bratislava, it was a bigger church, so they actually rented their own space in a shopping mall. And that would be the church that would run the first camp. So we got to plan stuff with them and do other, like run around the town and see some sites after we got done with the schools. So it was very cool. Next slide. This is in, this is in Žilina as well. One thing about Slovakia is that it has a lot of castles. It has the most castles per person anywhere in the world. This is A smaller one, but it was still pretty cool. It was a very old castle. This one was built in the 1300s, which is when a lot of the castles in Slovakia were built because they were fortifying against the Ottomans, who had invaded and taken over Hungary. This is actually a restaurant now. You can go in and order food and just sit out in front and just eat there. It's cool. And then they have like a little exhibit inside too, but we didn't go in to do that day. So yeah, it looked cool. Anyway, next slide. Yes, and then this is the main plaza of Banska Bystrica. A lot of the time there we spent talking with our leaders, planning for camps, just also training short-term teams. If anyone wants to go for just a couple weeks to Europe just to do camp, that's what the short-term teams are for. You can just go over and plan a lesson and teach it during camp. We basically train them as interns, and they go on to different camps that we don't get to. We went to the two biggest camps in Slovakia, but they went to Ružomberok, like Levice, the one in Banska itself, a bunch of different little towns that we didn't get to. So yeah, this is a memorial actually that the Soviets built after the war, commemorating the efforts of the partisans and basically celebrating the end of the war. Next slide, please. And this is and Slovakia is also naturally beautiful. This is someone's backyard, a missionary we went to basically. There's some hills that they have a house out in the middle of the mountains. One day we just were visiting them, having dinner with them, and we went out and basically had a little walk with his dog. There's actually a cool little mountain stream there you can drink out of. It's beautiful, and the forests are just awesome to walk through. Everyone's really cool with you just walking through the yard, because basically that's what this is. This is just everyone's backyard pretty much in that little addition. So it was really cool. We had a lot of fun just going on hikes sometimes, and yeah, it was awesome. I believe I had dinner with them the first couple nights we were in Slovakia, so this is pretty early into the trip as well. All right, next slide. And this is also another hike we went on. This is in Levice. This is with some kids that we met and actually got to talk with them. It was cool, and the farmers. We were walking through their fields, and they actually were very nice and offered us some cherries because they were in season. And it was very beautiful there as well. Basically, Levice is in the middle of the country as well, right south of Banska. And it's pretty flat there, but it's still hilly. It's cool. Next slide, please. All right, yeah. And this is a lot of the churches you can see there are very old, a lot older than the stuff we have here. This is a late Gothic church in Košice, in the east of the country. This is also a city we went to do our promotions in the schools. And this one was built in the Renaissance, early Renaissance period, around the 1500s, 1400s. It's a very cool church when you go inside. There's also a big bell tower right next door, right next to it. It's like a separate structure, but it looks like it's part of the same building. But there was actually a huge fire in there during the 1800s, and it burned everything inside the bell tower, and the bell fell out of the bell tower, and broke into a lot of pieces. They have it put back together now, and you can see it in the middle of the plaza there. It's actually really cool. In Košice, we basically also held a camp, as well as did some prayer meetings with the youth, and got just to walk around and talk with the leaders there, and it was really cool. The city is actually from you can see the walls from the medieval times, just like sitting on the sides of the roads in some places, and they actually have excavated the gate, and you can walk down to it and look at it from the medieval times. It's actually really cool. Next slide. Oh yeah, this is a better view of that same church. That's the bottom of the bell tower and a better view of the door. Next one. That's the inside. That's for, I forgot, that's for Becky. I know she likes monks, and that's the poor box inside the church. I think you can actually see the roof inside the church a little better in the next slide. Can you go to that one real quick? And yeah, that's the inside of the church. It's really cool, really beautiful. Yeah, also if you're ever hot in Slovakia, there isn't any air conditioning. This is the coolest place you can go to get cooled down. It's an old stone church, so it's like 60 degrees in there, even when it's like 90 degrees outside. So, yeah. And in Slovakia, I mean, it sounds like it's hot all the time in Slovakia in the summer, but it's not as hot as it is here. Here, water doesn't have anywhere to go. There, it drains off into rivers and stuff. So when the sun comes out after it rains, it actually cools down instead of gets warmer and steamier. So it's actually nice when it rains. Next slide, please. We traveled mostly by train. This is actually an old Eastern Bloc looking train that they had there. There's newer trains now that you can ride on, and they're a lot nicer. But you see a lot of old Soviet machinery and old Soviet factories when you're there in Slovakia a lot. So this is not an uncommon sight to see. There's just a lot of equipment that was abandoned, and you can just like see all of the stuff that they just kind of left and don't use anymore. It's kind of cool in its own way. But yeah, we mostly took trains to all different cities. It's the cheapest way of traveling there. It's really efficient. Trains mostly run on time. You're always slightly late, but it's not that bad. And yeah, I mean, it's like 20 euro to get from one side of the country to the other side of the country, partly because it's so small that it doesn't take long. But yeah, it's the train is usually what we took while we were there. We didn't drive ourselves, obviously, because we couldn't do that. But yeah, trains are what we mostly use to get around to places. Okay, next slide. This is actually the palace in Bratislava. I don't have these in any particular order, apparently. But this is a nice little garden and palace in Bratislava. This is like the main site to see. And this is kind of like where they took us to just to see the sights. And they also took us to a wine bar, like right after we got done doing a promotion, which was cool, but unfortunately we couldn't drink alcohol while we were there because we signed an agreement. They thought we were crazy when we told them that, because over there churches meet sometimes in bars, and they have youth meetings in bars sometimes. And drinking is, well, it's different over there than it is here. A lot more people drink a lot more often, and they don't apparently believe in not drinking during the daytime, because when I went over there, there were a lot of people sitting in pubs at like 9 o'clock in the morning, like as soon as they open. So yeah, it's just like a lot of the churches expect you to drink with them, and it's kind of weird to me, but to them it was normal. And yeah, it was that was part of the agreement we had. We couldn't drink while we were over there, which is fine, but I would have liked to try some of the wine. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is also in Bratislava. This is a memorial to the synagogue that was there during the World War II and Soviet occupation. It was a very old synagogue, but the communists tore it down to build a bridge. This is kind of like a memorial to that synagogue. It also tells a lot of sad stories about Jews coming back from the camps, them finding, trying to get back and reclaim the houses that they lived in before the war, and a lot of people were living in them, had bought them from someone else, or just taken the house because it was empty, and so a lot of the Jews had to leave Slovakia and immigrate to Israel. There's almost no Jews in Slovakia now. That their population never recovered. But yeah, this is just, you can see a lot of memorials like this for the Holocaust. And in Slovakia, they're almost in every town. So next slide, please. This is actually the gate in Košice that I was talking about. This is actually like excavated. You can go down and look at it. But yeah, this is a medieval gate that was there during the 1200s, 1300s, when Košice was like this big trading town because of the mineral wealth of Slovakia. They excavate, they mine gold, silver, copper, and aluminum from the mountains. A lot of the streams and rivers, if you really want to, you can pan for gold, and you can probably find it. But yeah, back in the day, Košice and Slovakia in general were like this big, very wealthy mining kingdom, basically. Yeah, next slide. And this is the Executioner's Museum in Košice. This used to be like the town jail for a while. This is actually really cool. These are the swords they used for the executions. If you notice on the bottom of each sword, there isn't a tip. There's actually, it's actually for only one purpose, for executions. They only ever used this sword when they were cutting someone's head off. So that's why they don't have a tip. So you can't stab anyone and go through armor in battle. And in the plaque, it said that it was very important, like ceremony that went along with it. And it would be, the sword would be guarded at all times by 2 sworn-in members of the town's council. So, yeah. Next slide. And that's the, I don't know why I put that in here, but that's the executioner's chair. You would sit on it backwards with your head on top of that big board there, the back of the chair, and they just cut your head off. That's actually the same chair 16 people were executed in. So that was fun. And weird that they mentioned that to me, but it was awesome because they had a dungeon and everything in the museum. It was cool. Yeah, next slide, please. I don't know why I put this all together. And then after we were done with the camps and everything, we went to Austria, and this is actually the palace. Can we go forward a few slides till we get to the pictures of me and the kids? Yeah. Thank you. Keep going. There you go. Oh, yeah, this is the camps. These are some of the kids that I was actually in the class with. These kids were really cool. They were part of the advanced class, so they spoke English very well. All the kids I had in my class were Slovak, though we did have classes of just Ukrainians. That was some of the other leaders who could speak Russian and Ukrainian led that one, but I led the Slovaks in the advanced class. The girl right next to me, right behind me, her name is Sylvia. She actually was really good at English, and she was only 12 years old, so technically she shouldn't have been able to go to the camps because it was for high school age kids. But she's really, really good at speaking English, and she almost has no accent, which is surprising for Slovaks because usually Slovak has an accent, and you can tell that they don't speak English natively, but she speaks it well. She speaks it so well that it seems like she's an American. But yeah, when she got to camp, she told one of the other leaders that she was actually an atheist. By the end of the camp, one of the other leaders gave her her Bible when she asked for it, and she read and accepted Christ in camp, along with the girl next to right next to her. Her name is Emma. It was actually something else in Slovak, but we called her Emma. Yeah, so it was really cool to see that happen. Next slide, please. And these were my best friends in camp. This is Brano and Richie. Brano's on the right, Richie's on the left. They were actually American football players. They play on an American football team in Slovakia. They were really cool guys. And we held, they were actually in my discussion group as well as my English class. They actually both accepted Christ there at the camp and are now connected with church in Bratislava, and they go every week. So it's really cool to see them and to keep up with them. Yeah, it was just really great talking to them at camp. Next slide, please. And these are our student helpers. Sam on right behind me, the guy with the long hair, he is actually a son of a missionary. So he's half American, half Slovak, basically. Well, he's a son of Americans, but he's grown up in Slovakia and he speaks Slovak natively. So it's kind of weird. They call them third culture kids because they're raised in a different culture than what they come from. And they create their own culture because they don't really feel like they're at home in Slovakia or in America. And Sam was really cool. And then right next to him is Henika. She's actually a Slovak who came to Christ in an earlier camp. They were both really cool and led the beginners, I believe, in their class. So yeah. Next slide, please. And this is some of the stuff we did at camps. We actually held workshops. I did knots. I taught them knots. A lot of Mimo, who led the camp itself, actually did guitar lessons. There was photo editing. There was workouts without equipment. There was hairstyling. There was, I believe, one person did chess as well. So it was just all kinds of little cool workshops at camp. And activities that we did, little games, basically worship every night. And then we had like an E-night party at the end of every night where we danced and had fun, just had a good time in general. We often didn't go to bed until after midnight, and we stayed up late and had a lot of different conversations. And yeah, it was just really a good time, and it was a lot of deep conversation at night. So camp was really awesome. All right, next photo. Oh yeah, this is the end. Okay, this is one of the when we took also a hiking day in the middle of each camp. We actually hiked around and saw a castle. This is a different castle than the other two. This is by Bratislava, but not in it. It's actually called Redstone Castle. And this is a little bridge there that was really cool and really cool to see. But yeah, I don't have a lot of photos from the second. I don't have any photos from the second camp really, because I wasn't there for most of it. As some of you know, I got COVID, so I couldn't go to that camp for very long. I was only there for a day or so. But what I know from other interns that were there and from the kids there, it went really well, and a lot of people heard and were connected with their church through the camp. So yeah, it was just an awesome time there. Can you go back to the other photos we skipped? I don't remember which ones those were. Oh yeah, so yeah, Vienna is where we spent our last couple days. I took about 1,500 photos during the trip. About 1,000 of them were in museums in Vienna because it was just awesome to see all the stuff that they had. As someone who wants to go in to the museum and history filled, it was really cool to see all the stuff that they had there. They had an entire quarter of the city, they call it, the museums quarter, just 4 museums. We only really got to go to one because we only had one day in Vienna, but this is the art museum. These are actually helmets and little like sculpture from Corinth, from a Greek city-state called Corinth, Corinthians. That's that city, and they had a lot of different Roman and Greek, Egyptian, and Renaissance art. it was just a really cool museum. Next slide. And yeah, a bunch of different jewelry, and this is actually an automaton, which is like basically like you wind it up and it's a toy that's completely covered in gold. So that's cool. Next slide. And we also did some renovation for JV. They're actually building a new office in Jelena. This used to be a bar and restaurant. We're turning it into an office for JV workers, basically their headquarters in Slovakia. They're actually called TC Kompas in Slovakia because JV is, Josiah Venture is kind of like for all the nations in Europe, all the Eastern and Central nations in Europe, and TC Kompas is basically their Slovak wing of JV. But yeah, this is what we were tasked with doing. We were supposed to do demo work for them. We took out the bricks on the edge of the stage and on the fireplace. So we got a lot of work in. You can go to the next slide, please. She did all that by herself in 5 minutes. It was very impressive with that hammer. But no, she didn't do that all by herself. Me and Caleb and took care of that stage, and they were working on the fireplace while we were working on that. Carly and Emma, or Anna, were working on the fireplace. And it was basically just a giant hammer and a chisel. We just broke all those bricks out and stacked them together on the floor for them to tear the stage out and put desks and cubicles in there so that they can have their headquarters there. So yeah. I think is that all? Okay. Yeah, that's it. So yeah, if you have any questions, yeah, and yeah, if you have any questions or anything, guess now's time to ask it. Yeah. At the first camp in Bratislava, I think it was 30, and the second camp it was slightly smaller. I think it was somewhere around 25. So, yeah, and there was about 12 Ukrainians who came to the first camp, and about 6 who came to the second one. So there were a mix of Slovak and Ukrainian kids at both camps. They weren't chosen. Like I said, we did promos at the schools. We just did advertisements basically for the camp. So we just went into the classroom, basically explained what the camps would be like, that there would be Americans there. We play different American sports. We work on their English. And we asked them to sign up and pay a small fee, and it would they would be in the camp if they signed up. So, yeah. No, it's a night camp. Yeah, it's a full. Yeah, it's just like if you've ever been to CDYC, it's just like CDYC. Basically, we just went to like a big building that they would have. Pretty much, they're all like these old youth camps that the communists used to have there and are now repurposed for JV. So it's really cool. Any other questions? Yes. Yeah. Well, you had to be rich if you wanted your head cut off, or a nobleman. If you were poor and you, I don't know, if you like stole someone's horse or you murdered somebody, it depended on whatever they did that deserved death. You would get hung if you were poor, but if you were rich, you got the faster way out, which was beheading. So, yeah. This is fun. I would say most people would tell you that they're Catholic in Slovakia. They're actually probably they're a very Catholic nation. They still have a lot of influence in Slovakia even after communism, and yeah, I don't think the church ever really went away in Slovakia, at least the Catholic one. But yeah, I mean yeah, they still have, most people go to Catholic church there. So I think something like 80% of the country at least say they're Catholic. So yeah. Yeah, I think Eastern Germany, which is actually part of JV's, one of their teams, if Eastern Germany were still its own country, it would be the most atheistic country in the world. And it has like 90% atheists, I think, there. And in the Czech Republic, it's pretty close also. So, yeah. Yes.
Did you get to run into any of the Ukrainian refugees who were fleeing Ukraine? Did you see those people groups?
I mean, yes. I met with them. A lot of, I mean, one of the waiters that at a restaurant I was eating at was Ukrainian. A lot of the kids in the camps were also Ukrainian. A lot of these people, a lot of these kids have actually seen the war happen, which is actually more than a lot of what our current active military have seen. They've gone through a lot. I met a kid whose father actually died in the war. I met another kid who was trying to cross the border, but he looked old, so they told him he had to stay and fight. So they handed him a weapon and told him to go to the front. And he was there for about a month before they've actually found out he was only 15 years old. So, yeah, I met a lot of those kids. I didn't actually like see any of them, but Slovakia is like the government is paying for people to stay and get jobs there in Slovakia. A lot of them are being sent to like Poland or Germany or bigger country because Slovakia doesn't have like a lot of room to absorb a lot of people. Yeah, a lot of them now are trying to settle down in Slovakia or Germany or Poland because a lot of their homes are gone. Like I said, there were a few students who spoke Russian at the camp, and they were from the Far East. And I think they said they're actually from Donetsk, which is in the very far east of the country, and is actually occupied by the Russians now. So, yeah. Yes, Sherry.
You mentioned people coming to know the Lord there. So
Mhm.
did that happen? I mean, when you had these camps, you talked about the workshops that you did. Were
Mhm.
there also meetings where the gospel was presented, or was that individually done?
Yeah, I mean, both. Yes, there's like an evening program where we would give like a little sermon and like worship time and skits, and we do a lot of stuff for them. We do some songs. We also have after each message that members of the church or an intern would give like a little message. We would break off into discussion groups, and that's where a lot of that happened. There was also a little time called the Lindenbrith, which we did. There were like stations that they could go around after a message, and one particular night, and it's basically where we asked the group if they wanted to follow Christ or not. And that was one of the last nights of the camp after we had kind of introduced them to the gospel. So yeah, it was it was a great time. Yeah. Any or other questions? Yes, Matthew. How many kids minister to? Yeah, I did a lot. There was probably, in my English class, there were probably about 10 or 11 kids in my English class. There were also, I believe, a bunch of people I worked with in the workshops and ministering to them in my discussion group. There were only about 4 or 5 people in my discussion group. But yeah, yeah, I mean, I tried to minister to everyone there at the camp as much as I could. And there were a lot of good conversations that happened. Sylvia loved asking me questions about the Bible. She was like, I believe she was in Genesis when we started the camp, because when she asked for the Bible, it was like the second day of camp, and then by the end of it, she was like in Psalms. She just absorbs information at an incredible rate. She was really awesome to talk to, and it was great that the camp happened. Yeah.
Has this had an effect on you personally and your interactions with people? I mean, you were there for a purpose.
Mhm.
Has that extended to here, what you're doing here?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it just made me realize that I need to invest more in relationships as a person, and I think that it really affected me. That it really showed me that a lot of people really want to know about Christ, and it shouldn't be a big deal for me to talk to people about it, because it's just what most people want to hear. They want to be they want you to be honest. They want you to discuss and talk about Christ with them. And if they don't want you to, then that's fine too. And it's not a big deal if they don't. So, yeah. It helped me with a lot of stuff in my life. So, yeah. Any other questions? What did we do in our English class? We did a lot. A lot of the curriculum that they gave me for my class, I felt like it was too easy for the group that I had. They were all really good at speaking English, so I had to adjust stuff, and we focused mostly on debates and tried to get into deeper conversations. Not necessarily just about the Bible, but also about other things. And I wanted to discuss like idioms with them, because that's something that they don't teach in schools. So like if they have their own idioms in their own language in Slovak, and American idioms don't necessarily translate literally. So like shooting fish in a barrel, all that stuff. They really like that one. Pick your poison. Yeah, and they have their own idioms that they taught me during that too. It was really cool. I should have put them up in the PowerPoint, but yeah, if you ever want to have a good time, look up Slovak idioms in Google. They're really funny. Yeah, and we also had like a little like debate where we did like a little debate over, is graffiti art? I had one team do yes and the other no, and I gave them like a day to like research and come up with reasons why, and then they had a little discussion the next day, and yeah, I didn't like give them grades or anything, but basically the point of the class was just to get them to talk in English for a very like extended amount of time, and teach them idioms, do some fun games that also like taught them English, like telephone. We did one game called Barnyard Shuffle. Yeah, there was all kinds of cool games that we did. But yeah, that's all we did pretty much in classes. So yeah. Any other questions? You? All right. I think that's it. All right. Thank you very much. If anyone has any other questions, feel free to ask them. And I have plenty more pictures if you want to see them. So if you want to see some more pictures inside a museum or something, or other buildings I was at, or more pictures of that last castle, you can come talk to me. I should be able to find them. Yep. So thank you.